So I just got back from seeing Sonic the Hedgehog once again, and this time I'm going into spoiler territory. What's up, YouTubers of the world? MegaGeekMixer here to give you guys a spoiler review on Sonic the Hedgehog. And I will say, after seeing the movie again, and when I looked at the trailers from what they had before the movie came out, I realized that the trailers kind of spoiled it. Kind of, really, but not exactly. More in the sense, like, when you look at the trailer and then you go see the movie, you pretty much know what the story is, pretty much at the beginning of it. Not that that hurts the film badly. I mean, it kind of brought the film down a little, but it still put it in a spot where I left it at an 8 out of 10. And it's because it was still a good movie. The plot was just simple, basic, not much to it, stuff they could have done more with it. And that was in the fact that this was about Sonic being left on Earth after being chased away from his home world by a group of echidnas who wanted to take Sonic's power, and he was saved from his, I guess you could say, guardian or mentor or both. What was her name? Longclaw, something like that. It was basically an owl, and I did love this little Easter egg mentioning of how Sonic, when he spoke about her, he spoke her as saying she was like Obi-Wan Kenobi. That was a really funny take right there. Oh, and also one more other thing to take away from the beginning of the film was that they showed us who Sonic was as a kid, and they gave us a little brief history to him as a kid. And by that I mean Sonic introduced us to himself as a kid and what he went through and stuff, and a short overview of it. So that's basically what it was there, and that's kind of where the film could have done even more with it. Because face it, when you think about Sonic, can you think of anything besides from the games he's been in, like his past as a little child and stuff? Tell me you guys can't think that part of you sometimes wants to look at what Sonic's childhood was like when he was a little kid. Because truthfully, I get curious about that myself, which is why I was glad they gave us a little overview of it, even though I kind of wanted more of it. But like I also said, in this film, we got to see what they would look like if the echidnas were in this live action story. And by when I talk about echidnas, you guys are probably wondering, why am I talking about echidnas? Well, if you guys know of the Sonic characters, you know Knuckles. That's what Knuckles is. He's an echidna. And that was basically giving us an Easter egg to Knuckles, even though he wasn't in this film. And a little teaser going forward, should they make a sequel, on how Knuckles can look if he appears in the film. And speaking of a sequel, well, I'm going to just go ahead and let y'all know right off the bat, for those of y'all who haven't seen the movie yet, and you're watching, not caring about spoilers, you must stay all the way close to the end. Like, once the credits roll, do not leave your seats, because there is a post-credit scene that teases another famous Sonic character. That being none other than Miles Tails Prower. That's right, guys. Tails shows up at the end, because at the end, he comes through the portal, most likely Sonic's world, and is looking for Sonic in the real world. Why is he looking for him? My guess is because he's trying to find Sonic and save him, thinking he might be in trouble on Earth, or it might be the other way around, because after what happens at the end of this movie, it could be Sonic's world that's in danger, and Tails has teleported to Earth to find Sonic to bring him back to his world so they can save it. And by that, I mean that at the end of this movie, Sonic takes Dr. Eggman to another world. A world that doesn't look like is Sonic's world, but in knowing Dr. Robotnik, how smart he is and everything, he's able to probably make a dimension hole of his own at the end of the movie, to where he eventually finds Sonic's world and now starts to rule over it. And when I'm talking about these dimensions, I'm talking about the rings. You guys all know that when you ever played Sonic, you need to collect rings to keep your life intact, or else you would die. Well, in this one, the rings play a role of being like dimension holes. All you have to do is think of where you want to go. Sonic had to throw that ring, and it would make a portal, and he would go through it. And that's basically also how the story plot goes forward at the beginning of it, because he escapes from the echidnas and lives on Earth. And basically basically, when I talked earlier about the plot being basic, one of the things to take away from this entire movie is that it's kind of like an Easter egg or inspiration from Sonic X. If you guys have ever saw Sonic X, you know how the series started. They were in their world, chaos control happened, and then they were teleported to Earth, where he befriended a boy named Christopher, who I'm not a fan of that kid's character, but even still, it was still a nice series here and there because it had some of the characters we're all familiar with, like Shadow, Rouge, and Cream and Cheese and others. But I just wanted to point that out there. That's not really anything important to go into. But as for Sonic, with him in this film, it's all about him pretty much finding family, finding a friends, and that's why this is kind of like a good family movie you can take your kids and friends to if you're all like family bonding and stuff like that. Because it's all really about Sonic feeling lonely and stuff because when he's living on Earth, he's hiding to protect himself because people could know about his power and want to use it for evil and stuff like that. But one night he gets a little out of control that his power gets in contact with the government who started hunting for him. That's where he and Ivo Robotnik eventually cross paths. And this actually movie does a great job in introducing us to how their rivalry began from the start. Because you could kind of get that back in the original Sonic game. Kind of. There's no really like dialogues or anything to it like it is in this movie. And speaking of dialogues, they had some good dialogues and they had some cringy dialogues, but I'll get into that here in a minute. But the rivalry that they started with Sonic and Robotnik was pretty cool. And I mentioned to you guys in my non-spoiler review, Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik was the best choice of all. I love pretty much most of his dialogues and how he interacted with people. And his interaction with Sonic is definitely funny too, especially when he starts sending his robots in to attack Sonic, especially when he and Tom are on the road trying to get to San Francisco. I mean, that one where Sonic was taking on the giant robot that just kept switching into different forms of robot during the whole car chase was hilarious, to say the least. And oh yes, I think the funniest part of all would have been when the small little tiny robot, I'm sure y'all saw it in the trailer, started shooting up on that car. And then here's the kicker here. Even though they stopped that little robot, then it got into this whole panicking cartoon moment of him and Tom just trying to get that little robot off of them because it stuck to their hands and they were trying to get it off because if they didn't, it was going to explode in their hands. It was a funny scene to behold right there. And speaking of funny scenes, I'm sorry I've already gone off topic about Dr. Eggman and Sonic, but then again, there's really not much to go up on. I mean, with the little things they gave us here, that yes, it was a great way to show off their rivalry, but I'll get a little more back into it. I'm going to just go into the funny sides real quick. Now, another funny scene of mine was this bar fight, and this was where Sonic was in a bar and finally being able to do some of the things he's always wanted to do, some of which he could do in the bar, and then it led into a bar fight. And if you guys saw my non-spoiler review, I mentioned about Quicksilver inspiration from X-Men's Days of Future Past. Well, that's exactly what happened in this film. During that whole bar fight, they showed us how Sonic is seeing the world because he's super fast, and basically he just ran around and got people into sorts of situations so that when it got back to regular time, it all shows to us what he did in those split seconds, such as putting someone's underwear on top of something, moving Tom away from getting punched. There's a lot of stuff he did. It's hard to keep track of them, but just see it for yourself, and trust me, you will be laughing your ass off at that, especially when he used all that toilet paper and made two guys a mummy. Oh, it was so funny right there. But, and yeah, another thing I wanted to talk about that's funny is when when Tom, now he's married to a wife named Maddie. Unfortunately, like I said before, she didn't play much of a role in this film. Her real role came just being as a supporting wife to her husband. Because for Tom, he was all about being a sheriff, and there wasn't much to do in his town. And he wanted to move to San Francisco to be able to make a difference, mean something and stuff, because he wanted to be able to save someone in a life or death situation. And that's basically what Sonic gives him when he and Sonic finally meet up. Because during the entire movie, Sonic knows who he is. It's just Tom who doesn't know who he is, because Sonic, during that time, in that small town Tom and Maddie live in, was like a ghost to people. No one really knew he exists except this one guy who called him the Blue Devil. and then we did get to see a little brief moment of him knowing of his existence, being onto him and stuff, and trying to capture him. And that's not as important. Moving straight on to Tom, like I said, he wanted to save Sonic because Sonic gave him what he always wanted: help someone who's in a life or death situation. And yeah, that's exactly what he did. And it came when he took Sonic to San Francisco because they needed to go there to get Sonic's rings, because they were accidentally sent to San Francisco when Sonic and Tom first met. Now, when they finally made it to San Francisco is where it finally led into the Dr. Robotnik and Sonic the Hedgehog fight. And that's where it actually led into an inspirational time of sometimes on Sonic and how he's usually running all over the place, jumping all over the place, just like in those platform games we have all played for most of our lives. It took great inspiration out of that. Also giving us the X-Men inspiration thing again, but this time with Robotnik's missiles just right there in front of Sonic, and him being on his supersonic speed again gave us an Easter egg callback to, you guys know that sometimes back in the originals, when you ever played Sonic and you didn't do anything, he would start tapping and looking at his arm and stuff, saying like, well, can we get moving here, guys? We're on the clock. There was just so much to Easter eggs, callbacks to all of this stuff. It kind of takes your breath away. But going back into what I said earlier about it being a family thing, the ending of the film showed that the town that Sonic was hiding out in, Green Hill, eventually they all came to know of his existence. And after the whole conflict with Dr. Ivo Robotnik was over, it pretty much went like Green Hill was back to normal, like it never happened. And that was when Tom and Maddie made Sonic started living with them. In other words, he became part of their family. And that's exactly what I mean by that stuff. And about the family thing, plot being pretty simple. And this is where I can also tell you guys that what the plot was simple, and that's what kind of made the movie lag, because there were some other things which were all just overviews, especially at the beginning with how Sonic's life was while he was in hiding, that they could have let us explore more. In other words, make the movie a bit longer than what it was, to make it be even better. Now, I know this may sound like I'm bashing on the film, but I'm just looking at it from a critic standpoint. I still don't take it away. It's still an 8 out of 10 film, just as I said earlier. I'm just talking about stuff that could have made the film much better and made me give it an even bigger score, like maybe an 8.5 out of 10. Such as when I said how this one local was on to Sonic, calling him the Blue Devil. I wish they would have elaborated on that more. It would have had some real funny, good scenes to that. And when it comes to Tom and his wife Maddie, there was a little plot with them where Maddie had a sister named Rachel who didn't approve of Tom and thinking that Maddie should just divorce him. I wish they had elaborated on that a little more too, because that would have really helped the film out more and understanding why she didn't want Maddie with Tom, because she already was against him from the very beginning of the movie. Now, when Sonic came in, you could kind of get her point there a little bit, only because, like, when you meet a hedgehog that can walk and talk, of course you're gonna have these ideas and being freaking out and stuff. For some people out there in the world, some people, not so much. But yeah, unfortunately, they never elaborated on that, and I wish they did, but that's okay. one more other thing I'm going to say before I go was about Sonic's shoes, because this really showed us Sonic, as I said, as a kid, which we didn't elaborate on, but they also gave us an origin on his shoes, because throughout the whole movie, he had pretty much shoes that you could probably say he scrapped up from people or took away and started having as his own. And basically, for all those years, those shoes were all worn out and stuff until he finally made it, and Tom finally took them to Maddie and Rachel's house, that the little girl who is Rachel's daughter, JoJo, gave him his signature sneaker shoes, the running shoes. That was a good moment to give us an origin on where they actually come from in this movie. And that's pretty much all I can say about this film. There's the pros, there's the cons I talked about. It was a great movie, and I loved every minute of it. And all I can say is, if you haven't seen it yet, go see it for yourself. You can form your own opinion of it. You could probably say I'm being too hyped about it. Maybe I am, but that's because of the nostalgia in me with Sonic the Hedgehog, and probably in the fact that it like Detective Pikachu, is one of the few successful movies that was a video game adapted into a movie. Because I admit, when I went into this thing, I had my doubts, but I'm very happy it did not disappoint. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it all at that, guys. And hey, if you're enjoying my videos, all you got to do is click that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to be notified when I make more videos. And until then, MegaGeekMixer signing out. Bye!